Hello, welcome back to our newest episode of Weekend Reading. This is Weekend Reading is where I talk about what graphic novels I read last week, what I'll be reading, and which one was my favorite, what I'll be reading this weekend, and then I pose a little comic book related question based on just, random thoughts I've had about, maybe the comic book industry or comic books themselves. So let's get into it. What did we read last week? Well, last week we read Reign of X, Volume 2, and Deceased, The Unkillables, which is the... Deceased was the mini-series about basically a sort of zombie apocalypse happening in the DC universe, and Deceased Unkillables was a mini-series related to that mini-series because it's become its own separate thing. It sounds stupid, but it's actually pretty good. I was surprised by how much I like the main mini-series, and Deceased Unkillables was actually my favorite read of this week, or of the past week. It was just a really good read. Tom Taylor's a really good writer. He wrote both the main miniseries and this. It's basically about, as the whole... it's not really a zombie apocalypse. It's like an anti-life techno-organic virus that spreads throughout the world and turns people into basically like zombie-like creatures. Though they can't be killed normally. So basically what it was this focused, the main series focused on the heroes. This series focused more on the villains and the anti-hero types, for the most part. It starts off with Deathstroke going on a job and the virus basically presenting there, and him having to kill a room full of guys, and then him getting infected himself, and then him waking up later, because apparently his weird healing abilities basically make him immune to the virus. And then at the same time, Jason Todd breaks into the Batcave and finds Batman, Tim Drake, and Dick Grayson all dead. They were killed in the main series. And so he goes looking for anyone else related to the Bat family, and he only finds two still alive. It's Batgirl Cassandra Cain and Jim Gordon. And he finds both of them and basically tells them that they have to get out of Gotham. So they steal a Batmobile and they escape from Gotham. Meanwhile, Deathstroke finds his daughter and then gets recruited by Mirror Master, who takes him to a secret island where Vandal Savage has recruited a group of supervillains under his sway to sort of work for him. And that turns out to be just a kind of a double cross, because really he wants Deathstroke and the Creeper, who both have healing abilities that make them immune to the virus. He basically wants to dissect them and study them to see why they're immune so he can reproduce the immunity for himself. It does not work out because a infected Wonder Woman shows up, destroys the place, kills Savage, and a few of them, some of the supervillains escape. Because while that was happening, Jason, Cassandra, and Gordon found an orphanage, and where it was just full of kids. There was no one else there. And everyone who was infected inside, all the caretakers and a couple of the other orphans, had been locked in a room by some mysterious superhero that then disappeared, and there's a group of infected outside surrounding the building. So the Gordon and Jason and Cassandra decide to stick around and watch over the kids, and then the supervillains show up, and they decide to combine in one group. They help teach the kids how to fight. And they kill the room full of infected people inside the building. It all seems to be going well until an infected Mirror Master shows back up, and then an infected Wonder Woman shows back up, and I think they infect Bane at one point, and he helps let all the other infected in, and then they have to escape from there. They escape in some buses and shit, and they try to find some place of safety. There's supposedly a forest in the middle of Gotham that they can escape to, but they get attacked by the infected Wonder Woman, and there's a whole disaster there. A couple of them die. And then it turns out that mysterious hero that helped the orphans originally was actually Mary Marvel, who was hiding amongst them. And she turns back into Mary Marvel, fights off Wonder Woman, and then helps the survivors escape into the forest, which it turns out was created by Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn, and is where a bunch of mystical heroes like Dr. Fate, Zatanna, and John Constantine are hiding out. And they basically decide to... They seem to be safe there, so they decide to just hide out there. And, we'll see if there's any continuation there of that. Once again, my descriptions of these books are terrible, but it's actually a really good book, and as you can see, the art's pretty good too. The art is by Carl Mostert. I think that's how you pronounce it. I don't know. Mostert. But yeah, that was last week's. What are we reading this week? Well, this week we have, first off, Iron Fist, Heart of the Dragon. By Larry Hama, Dave Wachter, and Niraj Menon. Let's see what this one's about. After this epic adventure, the Iron Fist will never be the same again. There are 8 heavenly cities, of which Kunlun is one. Each city has a dragon that is the manifestation of its chi, but now someone has gathered an undead army to attack each of the heavenly cities. Zombies again. Kill their dragons and collect their hearts, thereby stealing their chi. Pardon me. Danny Rand and his Kunlun partner Fu must manifest these cities on Earth and conscript other heroes to help hold back the undead hordes. And the action soon spreads across the globe from Brazil to Japan to Wakanda. Who will rise up and join the fight to save the dragons and stop the mysterious force bent on destroying the heavenly cities forever? Well, considering each heavenly city has a champion, I got to imagine that we'll see a few of them. But the Iron Fist stories are usually pretty good. I remember when he had his own series. It was a pretty damn good series. Missed that one. Next up is Maestro, War and Pax by Peter David, Javier Pina, Germain Peralta, Wilton Santos, Oren Jr., and Jesus Abertov. Call him the Maestro. In a broken future, the man once known as the Hulk is now neither man nor Hulk. After deposing Dystopia's ancient ruler, the Maestro sets his sight even higher. It's time everyone left on the ravaged planet Earth recognized their one and true ruler. But the Maestro isn't the only would-be immortal left, and he wants to truly dominate if he wants to truly dominate the globe, he'll have to face the most powerful being left in creation. The Pantheon sees all, including a Hulk too powerful to leave alive. And just when his former allies have him on the ropes, the Maestro's true enemy shows his face at last. And nobody's going to like the future he has planned. Peter David continues the tale he began decades ago in the legendary Hulk Future Imperfect. This looks like a definitely interesting read. I don't pick a choice of the week anymore because I figured that was kind of stupid. But if I did, it would probably be the Maestro one. I have a feeling that'll be the one that I say is my favorite when I do this next week. But yeah, that's the reads for this week. So what is the question of the week? Okay. A little change up with the question of the week. Normally I ask the question and then I try to answer it myself. And I've been racking my brain over the question I have this week, and now I'm just like, fuck it. I'm asking a question. Maybe you don't need my opinion on it. Yeah, I have to think it through a little bit more because it's kind of it's a bit of a difficult one, and it's a simple one actually. Every now and then you have characters that start out on in superhero comics there's heroes and there's villains. Over the years since like the 80s, we've also created the concept of the anti-hero who, 70s and 80s, the concept of the anti-hero who kind of blurs the line between hero and villain. But every now and then you'll get a character that starts off on one side and ends up on another. Now, more times than not, it's usually a villain that becomes a hero. Now, whether that stays the case or not remains to be seen. And that's what kind of muddies the waters of this question the more I thought about it. And that's the simple question is this. Which character changing their allegiance from either hero to villain or villain to hero or hero to villain made the least amount of sense? Like, which one seemed to come the most out of nowhere? There's quite a few notable heroic characters now that started off as villains, like in the Iron Man comic books, both Black Widow and Hawkeye started off as villains. Black Widow was a Soviet spy who was trying to sabotage Tony Stark Industries, and Hawkeye was a guy who tried to be a superhero and got confused for a villain, and then went on the run and got recruited by the Black Widow because she was playing on him being an idiot. But they both eventually became heroes. In fact, Hawkeye became a member of the Avengers with two other former villains that became heroes, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, who were part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants under their supposed father, Magneto, who it turns out wasn't their father because they're not actually mutants. And they decided they were done being villains and they decided to become heroes. Rogue was once a member of the Brotherhood when she was working with her adopted mother, Mystique. And, after having an incident with Captain Marvel, or Ms. Marvel, who is now Captain Marvel, she ended up becoming a hero. But, there's characters that have jumped from one side of the fence to the other plenty of times. The list goes on for so long. It's just that allegiance can shift greatly because I suppose the concept of a hero, like I've talked about it before. What is a hero and what is a villain? I suppose the concept of a villain and hero is kind of a loose definition, so it can mean just about anything. It depends on a point of view. It could depend on the person's point of view, whether they see themselves as a villain or not. I doubt most of the villains actually see themselves as villains, but I suppose it depends on the depiction in the comic book of who is the hero and who is the villain. So in the comic book itself, you have to ask yourself, a character that switched sides, which time did it make the least amount of sense? Which time did it feel unearned? And this kind of goes along with a question I'll have next week, which I have to think about a little bit more, but yeah, that's my question. Which character who switched sides? I'm just keep thinking about characters that switch. I mentioned Jason Todd in that comic book I read last week. I mean, he was a character who started off as a good guy, died, then came back as a bad guy, and now he's in that weird anti-hero place where he's kind of a good guy, but he doesn't really play by the rules, and it seems like more and more characters just become anti-heroes because it's like they're so ill-defined. They're definitely the cooler ones because they seem like good guys, but they do anything they want like bad guys. They don't follow rules like good guys. So I don't even know if that's definitive, and it works with Jason's character too. I also mentioned Harley Quinn. She's definitely, she started out as a villain, but has definitely fallen into more anti-hero territory. Poison Ivy seems to be leaning towards that nowadays too. So it's even Deathstroke, kinda, because Deathstroke's gone from villain to hero. There was a time when he became one of the good guys, and it was just like that didn't make a lot of sense. He might be the answer, because him becoming a hero at one point didn't make a whole lot of sense. So they actually switched him back to villain again, and now he's still pretty villainous. I mean, he's an assassin for hire. I don't know if originally in the comic book Sinestro started out as a hero and then became a villain, or if that just was something they retconned for the story. I don't know. I wasn't reading Green Lantern comic books back in the 60s because I wasn't alive yet. But that's definitely the story, is that he was a member of the Green Lantern Corps. He was a hero, and then he became a villain after it was exposed that he was taking his heroics way too far. But yeah, that's my question. What character who switched sides from either villain to hero or hero to villain made the least amount of sense in a comic book? When did it feel the least earned, like it wasn't set up for the story properly? Because the more I think about it, there's a few I could think of, but it's hard to pin down an exact answer. So tell me what you think, if you're actually watching this, or if you actually have an opinion. So yeah, that's weekend reading. Enjoy your weekend and enjoy your reading. Till next time.